Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Skill Point podcast. Today, I'm here with Luca Rosi, a copywriter in the recruitment space. Luca, you reached out to me after my recent podcast with Glenn, and was like, "Get me on the podcast. I want to talk about how to market it." So I
I
was like,
did, I did, I did.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Let's get you in here and let's moan about copywriting because I've got
Okay.
to be in my bonnet about what some of the stuff I see out there in the market." But I guess the first thing, would you like to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background in your expertise?
Yeah. Thank you, Haydn. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah. So basically, I started back in sort of my, if you like, content writing, copywriting journey, probably around the year 2000, the millennium. So it just shows my age. And back then it was sports writing. So that's how I got into it, because I was, a big sports fan, and we started, content writing for like football clubs and stuff like that, and loads of other sports content providers at the time. And from there, I sort of moved on. I did a journalism course, and got some good experience behind me in sort of newspapers, magazines. And about 6 years later, began my journey in the world of recruitment. That's 2006, and here I am 16 odd years later.
Wow, so a wealth of experience. Love it. First random question I'm going to throw at you. What can recruitment learn from the sports industry in terms of writing and copywriting? Is there anything that you had in that role when you did sports journalism that you feel that could match nicely with the recruitment industry?
Oh, that's a great question. I've never thought of the parallels. Well, I've actually written articles about the parallels of, sport and kind of leadership, for example, and that type of stuff. Obviously, there are many examples, but I think what I think if I had to pick one thing, I'd probably think it's the passion. I think I've always tried to sort of convey my passion in what I do. Footballers are passionate, football clubs, the fans are passionate. So sometimes it's just give it a bit of oomph, whatever you're doing, the writing that you're doing, show that passion about your company, about your products, whatever, but in a way, in a very normal kind of human kind of way, like you would with kind of your mates. And I think sometimes recruitment perhaps can be a little bit guilty of being a little bit dry, and dare I say it, a little bit boring. So sometimes inject a bit of passion, and you can, believe it or not, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. Because it is an exciting industry, and it's not really, I think a lot of recruitment agencies think about, oh, we're just doing the bums on the seat or the recruitment side. What's to talk about that? Or actually, you're working with interesting industries. So why don't you cover that a little bit more? And a lot of these recruiters are super passionate about what they do. So I love that, the analogy of putting passion in there. I think when it comes to writing and branding, industries and companies become a bit scared, don't they, to really show their personality. So I think that's probably one of the best ways to push it. Love that. So first question, I really wanted to just dig into copywriting for recruitment. And I think the first question to ask you, if anyone's not quite aware, like, what is copywriting and why is it so important in this industry?
I mean, yeah, the first thing to say is like there are a lot of sort of interchangeable words. So, the word copywriter normally is associated with the ad industry, for example. So advertising copywriters, but they're a very different animal. It's more conceptual writing. So I just thought I'd chuck that in there. The word is used. So yes, I probably refer to myself. You'd see a lot of job ads, copywriters, but whether it's content writer, copywriter, whatever you want, more maybe business writer, corporate writer, there's all sorts of words. So I think the word copywriting can be a bit misleading. It's not to be confused with the world of advertising, where they're not really writers as such. And probably I hope people aren't going to suddenly call in and sort of say, well, what's this guy talking about? But it is more the concept rather than the writing. So it's obviously the creative stuff. So sorry, Haydn, tell me, I digressed there. What was your question again?
So yeah, so I'm glad.
Not a good start there.
No, it's fine. So we know what a copywriter is now, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're a bunch of different writers. What's great?
Yeah.
What is the role of good writing in the recruitment industry? I think it's probably a better question for me to
Yeah,
ask.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of business kind of copywriting, sales writing. So basically, it's kind of selling but in a kind of in a non kind of salesy way. So it's making it engaging, making the copy engaging, and then there's all sorts of copywriting tips and tricks that, depending on the content format, obviously, if it's a web article, you've got SEO keywords, whether it's a report, you've got calls to action, there's the design side, but it's basically making it engaging, but knowing how to do that. And to do that, you have to adapt to the different forms of content and the different types. And to do that, you need experience of kind of having done that, because it's not easy. It's not easy to switch from a press release to a web article, to a report, to a white paper. They all require different disciplines and different techniques to make them as good as you can. But all in all, it's about selling, but in a kind of subtle way, and making it engaging and making people want to read, but also addressing them, talking to them, and not talking about yourself, because people want to know what's in it for you. For them, rather, they don't really want to know how brilliant you are, how brilliant your company is, how many awards you've won, all that type of jazz. They want to know, right, what's in it for me? Let's get to the nitty gritty. And that's typically, your kind of your features, but also the benefits. And that's where, it's benefit-led copy. By engaging with us, we will save you X amount of time. We will save you X amount of, and that's where things like case studies are quite powerful, because, you can get all those sorts of metrics in there, but it's obviously very much, it's about us. But just being normal and just like not trying to overthink it, but also trying to have that, giving the person, the audience reading it, giving them, a contact detail, don't, make them, show them that you're available, show them that you can pick up a phone to them, give them the sense that you're a friendly person. You're not just somebody writing something that's just, you want it to get a download because then, you're ticking the download box, whatever. Actually show that you're talking to people and put yourself in their shoes. So when I'm writing, I'm thinking, right, I want somebody to think, right, they can get in touch with me. This is a friendly piece of content. It gives me all the information that I want, but also I can approach them. There you go, approachability.
Yeah, perfect. And to say, recruitment agency owner listens to this, jumps on their website and thinks, oh, wow, it does talk about me a lot of the time. This is just all my benefits. Well, I completely agree with you. It's the wrong way of doing things. How do they sort of get in the mindset? Was there any activities they can do to start to think about how to not just sell themselves and talk about how great they are, but actually what benefit they'll have for the end customer?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult one, because sometimes, you can't overhaul everything, but I guess it's kind of, with your marketing team, your brand team, or whoever, it's obviously asking for advice. You know how it is. You hire people because they're good at what they do. Maybe some recruitment agency owners, directors, dare I say it, they might not be knowledgeable about marketing, or some are, some aren't. Maybe they're at different levels. So sometimes that's why you hire people who are experts in their field, and then you get that advice to make the changes that you kind of need, I think. Because the other thing, Haydn, is when you visit a website, I can automatically tell if it's a website that where they're paying attention to these things, where content is important, the way that they do it. It's very, very easy. And I don't think people aren't fools, aren't they? You go on a website, you look at it and you think, oh, do I really want to kind of apply there, or are they really giving me that value that I'm really looking for, the information, the advice? And you can immediately tell that as soon as you look at a website. So it's little things like, how you promote different things, the knowledge of your experts, whatever it may be. FAQs, for example, is a great thing. If you're a candidate or a client, perhaps you haven't engaged with a recruitment company before, walk them through the process. Little basics like that. So many steps that you can do, and you automatically get a feel for that as soon as you get on a website.
Yeah, perfect. And I completely agree with you. And I think one of the most important steps is, and I'll always bang on about this, is this like initial qualitative research, getting, your ideal customers and clients involved, all the candidates, and finding out what their challenges, day-to-day challenges are, their struggles. Once you kind of get that information, then being able to reverse engineer those into your copy to make sure that your benefits are actually looking like they do that is probably the best way of sort of getting your foundation right with any of this. From your sort of, you've been around in the industry a while, especially recruitment, what are the best companies doing right when it comes to their writing and their copy?
That's a good question, because I've always kind of been typically a one-man band. So wherever I've kind of worked, there has never really been anybody with, say, the specific experience that I've had, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because, it kind of maybe says that, well, if you don't have a specialist writer or someone who can write and know the industry, then who's doing kind of the writing? I suppose, you hire externally, whatever. But again, the dangers of doing that are the fact that perhaps they don't have the knowledge of the industry. So it's kind of like, it's that kind of point really around the combination of the knowledge and extracting that kind of the expertise from your experts, and having somebody that can then create that content, which of course then has to be executed, right? It's got to be promoted. That's where the wider marketing team and the whole team kind of comes together. But you need the content first and foremost, and then obviously you've got to promote it as well. So, obviously content is important. And I think a lot of recruitment agencies would at least lead you to believe that content is a focus. But then again, there are I would say, varying degrees of quality. And often I have to say, maybe content suffers when budgets are tight during difficult periods. Then maybe, people think, well, content, do we really need to be spending on that when we could be maybe spending on something else? And that's, I think, also an argument about marketing as well. Budgets aren't always kind of there, but without content, ultimately, what have you got, really? Let's be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like some agencies, I think you did it in a quite diplomatic way of saying budget, but I think it's just laziness and getting the wrong people involved to make that reality, thinking that they can take too much of it along themselves. A lot of these agencies are better off the owners are, running the business or billing if they're doing that. And actually, it's potentially a good idea to get an agency or a freelancer involved to be able to lend their expertise. Cool. So I guess this kind of leads me on to my next sort of question. And I really want to talk about job adverts. For me, it's a difficult one because I'm in two camps, really. I think one, the copy on a lot of job adverts is boring, and I think that's a detriment to potentially even the clients that you're working with. If you're putting out a bad job advert or you're not coaching them well enough, then that can look bad on you as a service. But then also, I think job adverts are rammed down the throat on social media quite a bit. You see as on the feed on agencies' LinkedIn feeds, there's just constant job posts, poorly written as well. So I kind of want to just open up a discussion about job posts and what they mean. And I'm sure you've probably got some thoughts being a writer yourself at how abysmal you see some of them. So from the straight off the bat, what's some tips that you would give to any agency, when they want to improve their the writing on their job ads and some common mistakes you see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still amazed now that when I look at job ads, the first thing that you see is kind of the role description. You get a long list of bullet points. This is what we expect of you, blah, 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 100 million things. We're looking for the world. And it's kind of like, hang on a minute, that's not what it's, you shouldn't start like that. You should start a little bit about what we can offer you. So it's the candidate that you're trying to attract. So don't start with the big long list. Start with a nice punchy introduction, give them maybe a feel of the culture, why they should come here, little things like that. And then slowly talk a little bit about the job as you go down. But the key focus should be more about what you can offer the candidate. So your EVP, think about flexible working, think about things like, the salary, of course, the benefits, the wider benefits, but why they should come to you. So make that the focal part of your job ad. And then, of course, talk a little bit about the job as well. And one of the things that I think companies get wrong as well is they're far too prescriptive. They expect miracles of people. And I think they should just, in a nice way, just maybe say, look, even if you don't, the job ads I love are the ones where at the bottom I kind of see, look, even if you don't tick all those boxes, we'd still love to talk to you. So just do it in a nice kind of friendly way where you're not alienating people that could potentially have the attitude to be amazing at the job. They might not tick all the boxes skills wise, but they might have the attitude and they could turn out to be your best employee. Don't put them off.
Love that. Perfect. I mean, I probably wouldn't even add anything to that. I think that is literally, that's how it should be done, really. I think the catchiness to start on off the whole thing with a hook that brings them in And I think as long as we get away from we've got an exciting role or some, hyperbole like that, I think that's what you need to get rid of, isn't it?
But Hayden, if I may, I think part of the problem is obviously who's writing these job ads. That's the
Yeah,
problem. If you leave
yeah.
it in the hands of the consultants, of course, they're time poor. They don't have the time to sit there, and they probably don't have the copywriting mindset either. So of course, they're just going to shove a couple of bullet points on there. Call or contact us for more details. Of course. So who's writing them? If you want an improvement, a qualitative improvement in job ads, you've got to get a specialist writer to work on. It's as simple as that. It takes time. You might not have
Mm,
that time, or you might
mm.
not believe in that. But you know what? Like everything in life, it's, the more time and quality that you apply, you're going to get a better end product, aren't you? Why not give it a go? You might see better results.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that was that was the next question I was going to ask you. I guess I was going to say, should it be outsourced? Should it be down to the marketing department to do it? Or, is there a potential to upskill the consultants within the business to be able to write good job ads?
That's a really good question. It's a tough one because it could almost be a job in itself. I remember way back when, when companies were publishing online job ads, and there was a team, there was maybe a content support team, and they would check it. These ads would come through to the team and potential. But again, the sheer volume, companies nowadays, you're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs. It's hard to kind of keep up with everything. So, I mean, that's a really, really different. Like I said, in an ideal world, yes, a content writer, a copywriter should at least look over it. In terms of upskilling consultants, to be honest, I think probably consultants won't have the time, and some, they just might not be interested in doing that. I don't necessarily know whether. I think you can certainly, as part of their training, as part of their onboarding or induction, whatever, of course, you've got to talk to them about the brand and guidelines and sort of certain things about, but how far can you go with that? They've got another job to do, and you've got to also accept that and appreciate that. So if you really put me on the spot, I think that, yeah, the consultants should maybe put it together as best as they can, but then somebody in marketing should review it, of course. It goes without saying.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think, I guess it all depends on how big the job is. If you're running some massive RPO for a big tech firm, then you probably want to spend a lot of time recruiting that developer. But if you've got just bums on seats and you just need to get stuff out, then leave it to the consultants. In your opinion, is copywriting something that you can teach, or do you think it's something that you've got in you? Is there a limit to how good you can get at it?
That's another really good question. Of course, you can teach, you can go on courses and stuff like that. I think you have to have a little bit of a passion for it. I'm very, very passionate about it. I love writing to bits. So for me, opening a Word document and starting moving things around, it's kind of how my brain works. So I'm very much more, I've got that kind of a brain rather than a visual brain. But that said, I love working with designers, but I'm not so visual. Of course, you can teach it. But again, yeah, you need to master the fundamentals. So I think my journalism course helped me with that. It gave me, a lot of kind of, how to structure, whether it's a short article, a feature article, whatever it may be, a press release. So, you learn those fundamentals, and that's important. So again, if you're hiring a content writer, ideally it would be great if there was somebody above them, maybe somebody with that kind of journalism experience, or even hire somebody that has studied journalism or been on a course, because I think that's important. And then the other thing is just an interest, reading books. I've read in numerous books on copywriting, the likes of people like Andy Maslin, loads of Tom Albright, and loads of people that, you go on Amazon, there's loads of really good copywriting books. And that's what I had to do, because journalism writing is one thing, sales business writing is another thing. So there you learn all the tips and tricks about, how to sort of put things together, but in a more business type of way that then will engage and kind of make it, very much, like I said, those copywriting tips and techniques, which you're not really going to learn in journalism school. And again, there's a difference between internal kind of writing. So for an internal newsletter, that's maybe a little bit more journalistic, but then you've got the sales writing, which is more your reports, your emails. So again, email marketing, subject lines, being creative. I love headlines. Journalism helps you with headlines, whether you're a Sun reader or not, or whatever it may be, that's the beauty of things like that. So you need a bit of a flair for it as well, I would say, but you do need some basic kind of tuition and coaching, I would say. But again, you can read, there's lots of great books out there. And yeah, and then obviously, as you know, with experience, you learn what works, what you should be doing, how you then, so for example, using the word you, the second person singular, it's not we do this, we do that, it's all about you'll get this, you'll get that. So again, you pick up things like that, having a strong call to action, a strong headline, subheadings, cross headings, breaking up the copy, breaking up the text, including keywords and all sorts. If it's online writing, it's linking back in making sure you've got your contextual links to other articles or contact us pages. So again, you're building up that kind of, the organic expertise of your company, and it's going to help you in search results. But again, you kind of pick that up along the way. But I think, it's not for everyone. I don't think everyone, you're just going to get somebody, look, write me 800 words about this. I think some people are going to have maybe a bit more of a talent than others, I suppose. I think that's just normal. Look, I'm a crap designer. I can barely crop a picture. I'll admit that. So, you can teach me all day long. It's not going to make me a good designer because I don't have a head for it. I don't have a passion for it. And maybe some people it's the same for them with writing.
Yeah, love it. Well, I think I'm the same. Like I do design and coding, and if I sat down in front of that kind of thing, if I've got a design, I need to code it up, I'm just in the flow immediately. But if I need to write a blog or a press release or some kind of thing like that, then it will be like walking through treacle, and it will require a lot of techniques and trips to be able to get all the information down.
But I would say, sorry, Haydn,
Yeah.
I just would say it does require, I think it was it Malcolm Gladwell, or not sure, whoever it is that wrote that, you need 10,000 hours to master your topic, or maybe Matthew Syed as well wrote about that. I can't remember, but I think, it takes a lot of time. I mean, even me, 16, 20 odd years on, I'm still learning. I'm not sat here saying I know everything. Every day people are, I'll probably make mistakes, or people will say, no, you haven't quite hit the brief, or whatever it may be. So it does take dedication. Like anything, any field that you want to improve, it takes those hours to read, to learn from other people, talk to others, and obviously practice and do it. If it's part of your job, then obviously you're going to get better at it, but it takes time. And I think people actually, I have to say this, and then sorry, I know I'm probably waffling on a bit, but I think writing is underrated, and I will say it is an underrated quality. People think, oh, you're a content writer, you're a copywriter, what's that? Oh, you must be like, what does he do all day long? Just kind of sit at a keyboard tapping away. But like I said, someone's got to write the content, somebody's got to do it. So if you're a director or a leader and you're seeing all these reports, have you ever asked yourself maybe the question, who's doing the writing?
And what is the ultimate benefit for a business for having great copy within it?
I think it's like anything else. It just shows that, like I said, when you visit a website, if you open a report, you download a report, you read an article. I mean, I'll know straight away if somebody that's an expert has written that, somebody who knows what they're doing. It's obvious to me, might not be obvious to someone else. I don't know. But of course, why wouldn't you want to have high quality writing? It's all over your brand, from, your website to your marketing, your collateral, events, everything. Why wouldn't you? Well, that's my question. Why wouldn't you? And if it isn't to the level that it should be, then, you should have some serious questions to answer, because, ultimately people are going to see that and they're going to go somewhere else, because they're going to think, Jesus, these guys can't even be bothered to write a couple of half decent articles. Why would I want to engage with them? That's how I would see it.
Yeah, and I think this is something I always say. It's like you need to lean on the consultant in recruitment consultant. So you need to establish yourself as like a insight-driven consultancy company like KPMG or whatever it would be, where you're just actually bringing in insights and putting your finger on the pulse. And good copy comes with that, because it makes it engaging, doesn't it? It sells the story, and it helps you stand out, really, doesn't it, in such a crowded market. But you think, but you know what I really want to talk to you about, Luca, while we're going, is tone of voice. Now, I know you sort of prefaced you don't actually properly do like tone of voice strategies, but I'm sure it's something that you're always working with. When we work with copywriters, sometimes that they'll implement that, or it's very much part of a branding process. What does tone of voice mean to you when you talk about that, and when it comes to copywriting?
Yeah, I think I touched on it. I think just generally it's kind of, I mean, I was lucky to attend some really great workshops with, I remember even companies like Interbrand at the time, working for different companies. And, you learn a lot from there and, certain people that you meet along the way. There was a guy called Andy York as well, who was a really big help to me as well. And Andy's like a very, very quite well-known kind of tone of voice copywriting expert. And yeah, I mean, I think what all it means really in a nutshell, quite simply, again, it's not something to overthink too much. It's just kind of how you want to be perceived, how you want to become across, how you want to come across. So companies will often send me, if I'm working on it, their brand guidelines. And often you've got, tone of voice. We want to come across as knowledgeable, professional, whatever it may be. But at the heart of it, and I always go back to it, is human language. It's just being human. It's being friendly. It's being warm. It's being conversational. It's all those good things that ultimately is just basically, it's very obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. And that's ultimately all it is. It's reading and thinking, yeah, it's like me and a mate down the pub, whatever, having a chat in a kind of nice way. And, yeah, I want to pick up the phone, like I said, and I want to talk to these people. So that's it. But obviously within that, you've got to show, you've got to demonstrate your expertise, professionalism, and recruitment, we know, can be a little bit on the maybe sort of formal side. And sometimes, and the other point I would make as well is recruitment has a habit of having a lot of internalisms. And by that, it's kind of internal acronyms and words like you mentioned, RPO and things like that. Always, always, always never assume that anybody knows what you're talking about. That's another point.
I was literally going to
Yeah.
touch on this question next. Is like, how do
All
you
right.
the internal versus external language? It's like
Okay.
candidates and clients. Someone's not going to go on the website and think, right, I'm
Yeah.
a client, I want to sign up for
Yeah.
this. So actually, I'm looking to hire, or I want to build my team. And is that something that's quite important to you to eliminate when you work with agencies? Is it something that you come across a lot?
Yeah, you do. Sorry, do you want me? Sorry, back to the tone of voice. Yeah, I think I've kind of said my piece on that. Haydn.
Yeah.
It's just kind of making it friendly, warm, conversational. I think that's the key. But also, of course, professional and knowledgeable, because recruitment is the world of expertise, right? So you've got to show that you're knowledgeable in your sector and in the particular solutions that you're offering. Of course. Yeah. No. Back to Sorry, what was the other one?
Internal versus
Oh yeah,
internal and external language.
yeah. Like I said, whenever I write, you're taught it at journalism school, whatever you want to call it, you spell out your acronym the first time that you use it. I don't care what acronym it is, whatever it is, you put in brackets what it means, and then afterwards you can use the acronym moving on. So yes, there are a lot of words, and I think the art of business copywriting is simplifying it, and also things like using a short word instead of a long, use instead of utilize, and then you've got all those words like leverage and all those type to action, which to impact, which shouldn't even be a verb, for example, and all those kind of verbal nouns. And okay, look, we're probably going to get into, we could be here all day kind of talking about that. And we all make those mistakes. We all use these words sometimes. I get that. But ultimately, yes, you've got to be very clear, even though often I find that you tend to be talking to business leaders or HR directors or whatever, but to me, they're all the same. We're all human beings. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO really, or a middle manager, or a junior associate starting out. I think you should still make it right in a fairly plain English. Let's call it that. Let's call it plain English that you can also, engage with the audience and avoid too many, too much internal jargon and too many words that are just going to bamboozle the audience, because at the end of the day, it's just going to make it more complicated, more difficult, more confusing. And also for the copywriter, you're going to end up writing about things that you don't really understand. So that's where you've got to actually try and understand it. So get on a call. If you don't, talk to the experts and look, Haydn, just explain to me, what does this mean exactly in very simple terms, and then try and convey it when you write it in your report or whatever.
Love that, especially if you're writing something and you've gone to the, so like for new marketers that join the companies, terms like RPO and things like that just really just will go over their head, and you just need to sit down and clarify it, and then make sure if you're asking that question, then there's a likelihood that a candidate or a client on your website is probably asking the same question. So just making sure that it's nice and clear. Something that really bothers me in the industry. Sorry, it sounds like I get bothered by a lot. I'm a grumpy man. But taglines for companies, and I think it's across the business spectrum as a whole. Things like best in class, market leading, innovative, those hyperbole statements, and I'm sure you probably see them quite a lot. They're meaningless. How do you best tackle them when you see them and you need to rewrite them to make them sound a little bit less hyperbole, really?
I think it's all about, you're right. I mean, sometimes, look, these words will slip in. Sometimes it's kind of normal. It happens. We're all, we all kind of, ideally they shouldn't, like you said. But I think it goes back to actually just conveying your expertise. Your expertise should speak for itself, right? If you're whatever, you're interviewing an expert and you talk about a market, you don't have to say, I'm best in class, I'm a recruitment consultant with 15, 20 years experience. Your knowledge will come across in the article, in the content. And someone reading it is probably far more likely to get in touch or to believe that you're an authentic, expert in what you're doing, rather than you telling them whether you're a company that you've won 100 awards or whether. But, listen, in press releases, boilerplates, of course, you're going to see that, we're a leading global whatever provider and, we've won awards and this and that. I mean, it happens. I suppose, you've got to promote a bit of what you're doing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I think focus more on the expertise and your knowledge and answering the question, and be humble. Be humble. That's another thing. Humility. It's important. It's an important leadership quality. It's an important quality for a company. Be humble. Yeah, and if somebody finds out that you've won awards down the line, great. But I'd rather, that you're remembered for being humble and someone thinking, yeah, they always provide information for me as a candidate, careers advice, whatever it may be, or as an organization. They're always trying to think about our challenges and answer the questions. Great. I want to engage with them. And then down the line, if you win an award, you might think, a potential client might think, wow, I'm not surprised they're winning awards, because that's because they're focusing on us primarily rather than sort of telling everyone how good they are kind of thing. So I'm big on humility. Let's be humble. Come on, everyone. Let's show a bit more humility.
Yeah, love that. Definitely, completely agree with that. Yeah, it doesn't come across sometimes, does it? I think people feel like they need to promote everything that they do to the maximum effect to be able to impress the client, but ends up looking like you don't know what you're doing and you're not being humble. So I really like that. We've touched on it a couple of times and just in the conversation, PR, press releases, things like that. Do you think it's still important in this industry?
Yeah, I think PR, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, it's all branding, PR. I think everything is important, of course. And I think, the job of PR professionals isn't easy, is it? Pitching in, to media and to get the coverage. But yes, it's fundamental because, again, it raises what it does. It raises the profile of your experts, by default, your company. And again, that's at the root of any content marketing. Is, for me, I'll always say, the thing that I'll always say first is, there is so much expertise within a company. Let's extract it. It's like almost drilling for oil. Let's get it up, let's get it out there and talk about it. And the knowledge comes from the experts. And obviously, to get it, you've got to talk to the experts. And then, whether it's writing articles, and of course, PR is a big part of that, getting that expertise out there, of course, massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think enough, I'll put my 2 pence on this, but I don't think enough agencies realize that avenue is possible to be able to get a PR professional involved and get some press releases written up and put out to like media publishers and news articles.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time you're talking about your specific industry and the state of the employment market, most likely. So that's always really interesting for any news outlet to pick up. And yeah, the amount of times that I've known companies that have got clients off the back of PR work that they put out is really important. So potentially, if you've got a salary survey or some really cool guide going out, talk to Luca about getting a PR press release written up and out there.
Well, yeah, but yeah, press releases are tough though, notoriously, because again, really headline tough, to get the attention of editors and stuff like that is, as any PR professional will tell you, it takes time to build those relationships. So that certainly isn't easy. But yeah, of course, and content as well. For example, a guest blog post, for example, things like that. There are many. It's not just publications, trade press, or national media. There's loads of other sector websites and channels and outlets that you can use as well. But just just get that expertise out there, whatever you're doing. And some people, for some reason, are a little bit loath to kind of doing it. But I think everyone, consultants should be, you know, kind of trained and sort of. And again, I know leaders, for example, will get media training specifically at like bigger companies. But again, you know, consultants should be part of their job, whether it's sharing on social, but also potentially, you know, raising their profile, whether it's on LinkedIn and stuff like that. And then you get into those habits, and then it just becomes normal and kind of natural to just kind of do it. But it's getting that expertise out there, I think, especially when you're building your candidate network and client network. Surely, you know, if you're an employer or a candidate and you see a consultant sharing on LinkedIn, aren't you going to think maybe, well, I'd rather talk to him than, you know, the consultant of his competitor who doesn't do anything on LinkedIn and never puts out any information on LinkedIn? I think it's a no-brainer, don't you?
Absolutely. And I think the most important things when it comes to the employer branding for the consultants is just sharing your journey. You don't always actually have to have really meaningful stuff to say, but if you've kind of got some personal experience that resonates with people and you put that in between you sharing interesting news articles in that industry, or maybe your thoughts, then that's a good way of getting like a nice homogenous mix between the content that's going out. And like you said, it's definitely a lot better proposition if you see if a client or a candidate sees you posting out, and you know, people buy from people, don't they? So it's your most powerful platform as a consultant. So if there's any consultants listening to this, definitely push that personal brand. Is probably the best thing you could actually do for yourself. I'd like to cover your sort of experience when it comes to ebooks, guides, surveys, all things like that, because I'm sure that you've probably done many jobs where you've been involved in writing the copy for it. You know, let's start off with, you know, how do you approach it? How do you make it engaging?
Sorry, Haydn, which specific format are you referring to?
Shall we talk about an ebook? I think an ebook is probably one that's quite big at the moment.
Yeah. By ebook, do you mean kind of like a flip book? You know, the interactive kind of ebook. That's what you.
Or more
a PDF. Oh, well, okay. Sure.
Guide or something like that.
Sure. No, that's interesting. So I think, how do you make it more engaging? So typically, I mean, in my experience, kind of how it works, you know, you get your brief to begin with. Hopefully, you know, you're going to get provided with material from the organization about the particular topic. Potentially, you might have to speak to SMEs, subject matter experts, and I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, you start, you know, you might have to conduct a bit of desk research yourself to get some stats in there. If the company, you know, if you're fortunate enough that they've got their own research, like you mentioned, from salary surveys or what have you, then of course you try and incorporate a little bit of that. But a bit of external research is good. How do you make it engaging? Great question. That then comes down to copywriting and your sort of tips and tricks that I kind of said before. You know, you kind of structure it in a way. You have an intro. The intro could come from a managing director, for example, but you're also thinking about design, because that's important. So obviously, whatever you write then will go into design, and that's when it lifts it, doesn't it? It elevates it, because you see your words, and then the magic kind of happens when content and design come together. So what you have to do as a copywriter is you've got to, as well as making sure it's factually accurate and, you know, you check everything and everything is 100% as it should be, you then also thinking about, right, how can I make it a little bit more visually appealing, for example? So like I said, with the introduction, you make sure you break up the copy. You might add some little box out, some call out boxes with some statistics, some facts, some quotes, for example. So whatever it may be, you mix those, you vary it up a bit, because then you're thinking when the designer comes to do it, he'll kind of love you for it, because there will be spaces to fill within the report. You've got a little fact box, you've got a little quote, you've got whatever it may be. And then I think that's always a really good tactic. And you try and break it up. You try and highlight, you try and zone in on the key parts within the major. So if you have a section, you might hone in rather on a subsection. So like I said, I keep saying box outs, but the reason I keep mentioning box outs is it's more the sense of you're separating and drawing attention to certain parts of a section which are important. Then you might chuck in a few bullet points now and again, sparingly. You've got to be careful with bullet points. Back to your point about being lazy. Yes, bullet points, they do serve their purpose sometimes. And then you carry on, you structure it, you look at your conclusion. Do we add some top takeaways in the conclusion, for example? Again, you don't just want a block of text in the conclusion. How can you make that a bit more visually appealing? So again, a good way of doing it is you draw out the main sort of conclusion points, call them top takeaways. You could call them something else. But again, it's all part and parcel of, if you download the PDF, you want to be able to print one particular page of that 15 or 5 or 6 page report, and you'll have some takeaways there. You don't want to print off one page and it's a big block of 1,000 words where you're just gonna, you're just gonna think, this is gonna give me a massive headache. I'm not even gonna bother reading it. So kind of that's the way that I approach it. Is I look at it is that if you break it down into each different section and page, if somebody prints off page 11, they're going to get something from page 11. Could be a quote, could be a fact, it could be some top takeaways, but I want them to get something, take something from it. So that's kind of the way that you approach it. And then you think of the headline. You might have a couple of alternative headlines. They're tricky ones because not everyone agrees. It's a bit like put 100 economists in a room, you get 100 different opinions. People, the business that you're writing for will have their own ideas, and they're going to change what you do often. You can't expect that everything you do, they're just going to soak it up and say, oh, brilliant, every verbatim, we loved every single word of what you did. But you take that on board as well, you work on that, and then you come to the call to action. So you have that nice structure, and then the designer with iconography, whatever it is, will bring it alive with what designers do best. And as I said, that's where the magic kind of happens, is when you get the words and design. But as a copywriter, you've got to think about not just the writing, you have to think about the engagement piece, and you've got to think about the design, those elements, and add comments into your document for the designer to say, look, I think this might work well as a quote, or this might work, you might want to highlight this section, little things like that, little kind of, call it, mixing it up a bit.
Absolutely, completely agree. Then I think a lot of people are guilty of creating these ebooks, for example, white paper, whatever, and it is just blocks of text, and sometimes it's related to the page before, and it's just too much. I think a lot of the time you're going to have people looking at this on their mobiles, so you need that quick actionable advice, don't you, broken up, just get that message across as clearly and concise as proper.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times copywriters, and I'm sure you probably do it, is they'll cut a sentence down in half, won't they, because there's too much fluff in a sentence, and I think it's trying to get that conciseness down, isn't it?
Yeah, the other thing as well, the point about kind of breaking things up into sections that I was mentioning, is the fact that you can repurpose a lot of content. In a white paper, you've got a lot of rich content. You've got often 5,000 words, sometimes more, sometimes less, whatever. But the reason that those like call outs work well, the top takeaways, is then you've actually got a ready-made infographic for social media as well. So that's the beauty of it as well. And that goes into the thinking process. And even a webinar, whatever it may be, there's so many different types of content out there that you can use in so many different ways. But it's a time thing again, and it goes back to your point of laziness, because you've got to try and really extract everything from your content, and if you've got good content, you can use it in a lot of different ways, but it takes time. That's why you need a specialist writer to help you with stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. But no, I completely agree. The stretching of that content is just the most important thing you can figure out. As long as you've got so I feel like the conversation we've had here is we've talked about the research, the qualitative insights, getting to understand what these customers and clients are really wanting, and then building that into engaging copy through something like an ebook, and then that's optimized in a way that that message can get across nicely, whatever format they're using it on, and then it's taking that and promoting it out into kind of PR methodology, and then stretching it into infographics, videos, podcast episodes, blogs, whatever. You can get so much out of just one piece of. You spend all that time, and you bring in outside resources like designers and copywriters, and then you just shoot your shot, put it out there, stick it behind a fucking paywall or behind a form, and then you try and send them loads of rubbish emails after, and it's just not the way you need to be doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, of course. And people, obviously video is important. We know that, and content, and but also finding out from your audience as well, because you're going to get people that, prefer to read, people that are more visual, whatever. But at the end of the day, I do sometimes think that too much is placed on kind of the visual and videos and kind of, the interactive digital kind of stuff. But content is content at the end of the day. And I think people will, people are, if the content is the correct content that kind of hits the nail, people, it's a little bit like the debate about long form or short form writing, but it's proven that if you write a long article that's interesting, people will read it. So it's not, it's not to say that something shorter is always better. And hence why there's always, for me anyway, and I guess I would say that in a way, but genuinely, of course, there is a place for long form content. Of course there is, because that's then it's up to you then how you then, like you said, you could have like videos around that content talking about the white paper or the research, like a talking heads video, whatever. That's the beauty. That's when you get creative and where it all really comes together. But I would say get that juicy, really like powerful content out there, and then you can slice it and dice it in so many ways, and like you said, make so much from it, and it all really comes together. But people really, I think people warm to sort of research and and kind of expertise and knowledge and stuff like that, things that they don't know and things that are going to help them. So that's where you've got to get creative with your marketing team and kind of work out what are the priorities. But also, of course, you also have to find out from your audience what they like. And I think it's important to get a feel for perhaps what your candidates want, what your clients like. But things like case studies, I think as well, that can be very, very powerful, but they take time. You've got to get on a call with a client. You've got to get to do a case study properly takes a hell of a lot of time, and then you've got to get approvals from the client, stuff like that. And sometimes that can be a little bit off-putting, but anything that's worth it in the end will pay dividends. But it's a quality thing at the end of the day, and you can't take you can't cut corners with stuff like that. If you want to produce good content, it takes time. Simple as.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I put a post out the other day actually, and it was like the 3 most popular pages across most of the sites that we built are actually the home, obviously, about. So actually selling your company, being able to talk about your values so people resonate. But the third most popular one is usually the testimonials or the case studies page, because people want to see that they'll come to your website with a bunch of issues or problems, and you need to sort of be able to solve those, don't you, within that quick amount of time. So they might come on here and say, oh well, I don't think they can recruit for the US, this company, and then they go on your case study page and you see that you filled a massive team in New York or something along the lines of that. Then that issue that they've got is completely solved, and they kind of qualifying themselves on your website as long as you're covering all their issues along the way. One big question that I'm kind of back and forth on it, and I think I've made up my mind, and I think it is the right thing, but blogs, are they dead? Is a blog on a website dead apart from the use it has for SEO?
Well, no, I would never say that. I'm not of that school. I mean, you're talking to the wrong person.
Do you know what? I know. My mind is
someone else on the podcast. No, I'm a big fan of blogs. Of course, I am. That's what I do as well. I write a lot of them. So yeah, I cannot. Criticize kind of blogs. No, because it's back to the point of kind of expertise. Yes, SEO, of course, but also you've got LinkedIn blogging, for example. So on LinkedIn Pulse, people, they're effectively blogs, and it's another way you can publish on LinkedIn, for example. Guest blogging that I mentioned to you before as well. But so for me, obviously, they're, I think it's very powerful. Blogs, articles, kind of they're sort of one and the same thing, I suppose. But I guess blogs that are kind of written where you're interviewing experts and you have quotes from subject matter experts, I think are more powerful coming from someone. Of course, I think they kind of, I think you've just got to do it regularly and consistently, I think. So why'd you say they're dead, out of interest?
Just a lot of people are doing them a lot less, aren't they? And I think you go on a lot of websites and they've probably got like 4 from like 2 years ago. I'm completely in the same boat as you. I think there is the SEO argument to be made, but also the way SEO is going, a lot of it comes from just the content on your website and things like case studies and FAQs and how it's all interconnected. And don't even get me started on SEO. I had a chat about SEO with a different guest. But no, I do think blogs still have a place. At the end of the day, it's like a podcast. It's a piece of keystone content that you spend quite a bit of time getting that information from, that not only can be useful as a blog on your website to show that you're an expert within that sort of industry or talking to experts, but then you can reuse all of that for social media content, infographics, videos, whatever. It's all still reusable.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, Hayden, if I may, about blogs as well, they shouldn't just be kind of the preserve of leaders and senior managers. I think you should spread the net a bit. So, I've kind of launched blogging programs in the past, and then, you never know. Often there are some people that really enjoy it, that have an opinion and are kind of quite not necessarily controversial, but they actually like to kind of get, write and stuff like that. So it's also unearthing those people within the organization, maybe lower down or wherever it may be. You could have people that like to blog. So it shouldn't just be coming from kind of the top. Typically in a press release, whatever, you're going to get quotes from MDs and directors and stuff like that. But consultants as well should really, kind of partake in it. And also the fact that it kind of goes back to that sort of content transmission where, on LinkedIn, you've got your networks, and then you get that multiplier effect as well. So it's important you get it out on your network, and then it's shared by other people, and then it kind of, there's that big kind of effect that, the views kind of multiply and stuff like that. So yeah, blogging shouldn't just be, I think a lot of, it should be a lot broader and allow, other people to kind of to blog as well. And I think that would also maybe help get people engaged as well, because then it's also good for their brand. And I think people kind of get a buzz as well, I think, if you see an article that's written in your name as well and stuff like that. But it's good for your network, because people will see that, you're talking about topics that are important to us as well. So that's another thing to bear in mind. And I think maybe, I get it, it's a time thing again. Consultants necessarily don't have the time, whether it's posting on social media, whatever. But I think if you get a broader section of people also blogging across different sectors as well, because typically a lot of recruitment companies, specialize in different sectors, I think that's important.
Yeah, perfect. No, I completely agree with you. We've got some clients that they if they go to like a trade show or something, they usually have a bit of an agenda of information they want to find out, or people they want to interview, and they usually produce a blog or a video off the back of that. Was always a good way of doing it. But yeah, it's finding the champions in your business, isn't it? And whether it's personal branding or marketing, that are not scared to do that, and then they can see the return on investment on them spending the time on doing that, and then they shout about it, and then the rest of the team want to get involved.
Yeah.
Final question for you, Luca, and then we've got a little bit of quick fire at the end as we're coming to the end. It's been a really good chat. From your writer's perspective, what do you think the future of the recruitment industry looks like?
From a writer's perspective, well, I'd like to think it's bright. I mean, content marketing has been an evolving sort of specialist area, especially maybe the last, 5-10 years, whatever. It's grown in importance. So yeah, I mean, I would like to think that will continue, because as you mentioned before, whether your consultancies like your McKinsey's, your KPMG's, your Bain and Companies, and all these companies, like you said, if you look Ernst and Young, PwC, all these companies, they're cranking out content all the time. So, that says something about its importance. So, and I think, the value in that is non-arguable, really. So I'd like to hope that it will carry on that sort of trajectory moving forwards, and that there will always be kind of a focus on content. Whether that, I don't have a crystal ball. Things will obviously develop, and technologies and things will happen, but I do hope that there will always be some time and a demand for good content.
Yeah, completely agree. Absolutely. I think it's always going to be there, and I think it's becoming more and more prevalent that it's more important than some of the other old school marketing tactics still being employed.
Just the last thing I just wanted to say very quickly,
of course,
in terms of content as well, like the regularity and the consistency as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies curate content, and when I see that, to me it's like a red rag to a bull. I don't, for me, that's back to your point, the word lazy. It's kind of like, why don't you want to produce fresh content? Now, sometimes people are afraid, and they say, oh, we mustn't post too much on LinkedIn, or we must only do like one a week. But, it doesn't, to me, that doesn't really matter. If you've got 2 or 3 articles a week, get them out there. Who cares? It shows that, you care about content. It shows that you care about, you want to put good content out there, informative content, insightful content. Get it out there. And you don't see enough of that. You just do not see enough of that. It's all this kind of curating an article from the Guardian or for the BBC. I mean, what's the point of that? As far as I'm concerned, I see absolutely no point in that. If I want to go to the Guardian, I'll check on the BBC. I'll read all the articles. I'll go to the outlets that you don't have to be putting it out there. Or if there's an article about that, write your opinion about it and then, put it out there. Don't sort of, just kind of lean on someone else's opinion. So I've got my content writing hat on, and I know I'm probably very biased in that way, but it is laziness. And it also shows that we don't really care about content. We don't really care about our audience. We'll just put anything out there really just to show that we're active on LinkedIn. A lot of companies do that.
Yeah, I think the best one that we've seen in terms of curating sort of insight news is they do like an insight PDF at the end of each month that they design, and it looks really nice, and it's kind of like movers and shakers, big buyouts, press releases that are going on in the industry. But that's just a PDF that they send out to their database at the end of the month. It's not just let's just reshare like a Guardian article about the state of employment or something like that. And like you said, if you do want to share it, you think it's an interesting article and your audience want to read it, why? And then maybe break it down into a blog and do more with it. I think you're nail on the head there. I think, and it's the theme of the laziness that we've talked about. It's easy to just go on Feedly and share something or whatever.
Yeah, but if you're a consultant, I think that's fine. If you've read an article you're really interested in, you copy and paste the link in your own personal feed, by all means. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Well, my issue is like with companies that all their content is curated content. So every day it's an article from the company page. That's more my issue.
Right.
I think from the company page, it should be more fresh, your own content rather than content from another company. As a consultant, as a person, you can share what you like.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you'll see that a lot when you with the company, and it does my head in with company pages, and all you see on their feed is, oh, this news article from the Guardian or whatever, and then it's a job post, and then it's something from the news outlet job post, and it's just nothing is really theirs because they're sharing someone else's job, and then they're sharing someone else's article. So what's authentic on there? Nothing's authentic on there. So yeah.
I mean, look, I may be exaggerating a little bit, and I'm sure that the odd curated article, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to say, but I guess, I look at it from another lens, and that's the lens of you've got so much content, you've got so much expertise. Why aren't you getting it out there? What are you doing? Why haven't you if you haven't got a person to do it or whatever, you should think about that. And I think it should be a bit of a concern if you're not doing that, and leaders and whoever it is, if they see that, they should be picking up on it. I would have thought.
Absolutely. My biggest tip for if you're thinking like, oh, I don't have any content to post about, I don't know, things like that, or I don't have any content that I'm sitting on, get something like otter.ai and just install it, set it up. Every call you go on with a client or a candidate, just have it recording. It does a full transcript of all the notes, and then you can go through, and I'm sure they've asked you some poignant questions or you've given them some advice. You're able to just take all that, and then before you know it, you'll be actually sitting on a mountain of content you can talk about. It's personal branding or blogs or anything like that.
Yeah. Can I come back really quickly to a point about job descriptions?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
sorry, because stuff comes into my head, and the other thing is, recruitment consultants typically that kind of deal with a job, they will have visited the client, right? They may have gone to talk to the hiring manager. They will understand about the culture. As a candidate, we've all done it. You meet with a consultant and they tell you, this is a great team, the culture, this, blah, blah, blah. So some of those nuggets, why don't you get them into the job description? If the hiring manager has told you, if there's something, you visited the offices, you've seen it for yourself firsthand, why don't get creative around that? Add something, add a bit of color to the job description. And that's where I guess a consultant has the advantage, because he will have met the hiring manager, might have gone to the company, the premises, not always, but often, I'm sure they do, because they build relationships. That's part of their job, to build get it into the job description. And I remember I used to think about that, and I used to be baffled, and I used to think, why aren't you telling me this? It seems simple to me. Why are you keeping it under wraps? If you want me to get things like that.
Yeah, love that, love that. And I think it just comes down to the whole like reputation piece and doing a good service. And it's just you go above and beyond for these clients. You say, look, well, I noticed this. I noticed you got a great culture, whatever. Why is it not in
Yeah,
your job description? They're going to be thankful for it. You know, any
exactly right,
you're there to
exactly
be a
right.
consultant, not just
Yeah.
dragging bums out of LinkedIn and put them into their company. You need to consult and play more of a part in making, you know, they're coming to you as the expert. So yeah, no, completely love that. Love that as a final point. Um, just to finish off, Luca, I really appreciate your time. Some quick fire questions. I don't know if
Okay.
you saw these before.
Gonna catch me out, I think.
First one, what's your favorite brand of cereal?
You know what? I don't eat cereal, so
Do you
that's
not?
that's that.
Everyone
No,
I speak to is
that's
like not bothered about cereal. I'm
that's a very
mortified.
simple one. Yeah, sorry.
What's your breakfast of choice
Next.
and breakfast food of choice?
I always have a cappuccino in the morning. Not so much because of my Italian roots. I love tea, but I've just got into the habit. I just love a coffee in the morning, and yeah, I'm not really big into breakfast, to be honest.
Are you intermittent faster or are you
Oh,
just going
blimey.
breakfast?
No, not at all. No. I just kind of get crack. I like, yeah, no, I don't really, not really that big into cup. But, you know, I think it's a very kind of a British thing. I think I'm more maybe Italian in that way, like a cappuccino, a croissant, rather than
Yeah.
your toast or your cereal. Maybe something a bit more quick sort of thing, or porridge now and again. Yeah, I'll have a bit of porridge now and again. But cereals, I've never really been a cereal kind of guy.
Okay, no worries. Best productivity techniques slash method. You know, how do you stay productive?
Yeah, good one. I remember once interviewing Graham Alcott, who the so-called productivity ninja, and you know you can find his book on Amazon. He's an expert in productivity, and he always told me monotasking. So obviously focusing on kind of one task is important. I remember him telling me that, and also working on your big priorities when you're most kind of productive. So I'm a morning person. I wake up very early. For me, you know, I love getting my hours in before lunch, and then it becomes a diminishing marginal returns in the afternoon. So I notice, you know, I dip, and then you get to about 5 o'clock when my brain is kind of frazzled, kind of thing. So generally, mornings are good for me. So work out what the time of day is when you're most kind of productive, alert, whatever. Get your big stuff done in that kind of time window, and monotask, focus on one task.
Yeah, love that. I can't remember the name of her though. I watched a YouTuber, and she actually mapped out on a chart over like a month, like when she felt she was the most productive. So she had a note of it, and then she had like this visual chart of like on the days where there was like these common themes, like oh, I'm really productive in the morning. On Monday and Tuesday, it's mid-afternoon, and then she was able to like plot her tasks in those most productive areas. And I think it's just like auditing your time really strictly, and then figuring out when you are most productive is probably the best time to sort of figure it out because yeah.
Yeah, no, and let me just say, and I'm really bad at it. I think writing stuff down is important, of course. So whether you have notes or a pad, whatever, I tend to stupidly keep stuff in my head, and I'm really, really bad at that. So I think that's not a good thing either, because then, you know, you keep up to date. I shouldn't probably really admit to that, but yeah, it's an area I probably
Well,
need
your brain can
to
only
work at.
hold 5 things in its head at any one time. So if you bring anything else in, it's gone.
yeah, yeah, my brain can only hold about one thing at a time.
Yeah, I think I'm the same.
Hence the monotasking.
I don't know if you're a movie buff, but have you got a favorite movie?
I'm not a movie buff particularly, but I do. One film I always go back to, because I'm a big sort of Al Pacino fan, and one of his maybe lesser known films, 1972, called Serpico.
Yeah,
It was
that's a
like
great movie.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever seen that, but I think I always go back to that, and I think it's one of my all-time favorite. I think it was nominated for an Oscar. Actually, he didn't get it, but for me, one of my all-time greatest films,
Yeah,
Serpico. Al Pacino.
yeah, I know that movie. My mum's quite into movies, so I remember she sat me down to watch that, along with things like Heat and stuff like that. All that sort
Yeah.
of great movies. What company do you think out there does marketing the best? Doesn't need to be in the recruitment sector, just any great company.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that, because I do like my pale ale. So I did have a quick Google companies like kind of Tiny Rebel and, you know, Beavertown and stuff like that. But I
Beavertown are
actually,
really good, yeah.
yeah, they're good. But I'm not going to choose them. I'm going to choose Red Bull, because I think the founder recently died, didn't he? Dieter I can't remember the surname, Matisic. I think the Austrian founder of Red Bull. And I think the reason I choose them is because not just the logo gives you wings, which I think they've kept since whenever it was, 87, whenever it was. But I think just the content, obviously being a sports fan myself, they've become like a multimedia publishing empire, haven't they? And all the sponsorships from F1 to, the Red Bull Rampage and all the stuff that they do, I think is just incredible. And I think they really know how to sort of produce content that their audience really loves, I think. So I think I've got to give a nod to Red Bull, and given that, the founder recently sadly passed away as well, I think they've done an incredible job, and they're an amazing kind of brand in their own right.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. Yeah, they're really good. And I think it's a lesson that harks back to when we first talked. It's the same with Nike. They don't sell. Red Bull doesn't say like, oh, we've got 10 milligrams of caffeine per can or something like that. Red Bull gives you wins. That's not an actual thing that happens, but it's kind of like the end result, the feeling of the person that consumes it. And then it's the sport thing as well. It's where it shouldn't make sense that an energy drink initially should have sponsored sport and been involved in that, but it's kind of those are the people that drink it, and then you're getting involved in the things they're interested with. So
correct.
And that's what companies need to get their mindset around. It's not like what's you're great at, it's like how can you make a difference. So I think that's a perfect company to
spot on, Haydn. So can I add one last thing? Another thing has come. I know I'm terrible at interjecting. Please apologize. Please apologize.
No, as much value as possible, pack it in.
Back to your job ad discussion that you were saying, the phrase that I come back to: sell, don't tell. So there you go. Sell your company, the EVP, what you were saying, and don't tell, we want this, we want that. Sell the benefits of coming to work for your company. So sell, don't tell. That is my last word.
Love it. I have one more question actually. So you might have more words.
Okay, more words. We like words.
If you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be? That's the last question. Would it be Italy? Would it be the
No, not really. No, not really. No, not at all. I think, London's my hometown. I was lucky to be born in this amazing city, and I'm still here. I'm always drawn to it, and wherever I'll be in the future, I don't know. London will always have a special place in my heart. I'll always miss it, and I'll always love it. Simple as I really, that has to be my answer, and that is my answer. There you go.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Yeah, no, absolutely. Stick to your roots, your home roots. Thank you so much, Luca, for your time. I really appreciate it. I think we had a really good conversation, lots of value. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, talk to you, where you're hanging out, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, they can search for me, and whatever. Yeah, I'm sure they can find me. There aren't too many. I think specialist recruitment copywriters is my tagline. So I don't think there are too many of us around. So yeah, by all means, reach out. Always happy to have. And thank you, Haydn, for the opportunity. I've really, really enjoyed it.
No, fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to the podcast. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, evening, whatever you're doing. Have a great one. Thanks.